All right. Hi, everybody. This is Scott Schimmel, the co-host of the Dream Big podcast with Bob Goff and friends. And I'm here with Bob Goff.
Hey, everybody. I'm glad we're back again. And this is going to be fun, talking to my friend Ian Cron. He is a person that is wise and deep and kind. And boy, you're just going to start hearing that right from the very beginning of our conversation. He's a guy that you'll want to take some notes on because what he has to say, you're going to want to circle back to that. I find myself when I'm with my friends, I've got sometimes my phone in my left hand listening and a pen in my right hand writing, because I don't want these things to slip by. You know that you're fully engaged if you're taking notes. And so go get a pen before you start listening to this, because Ian's going to have some things for you you're going to want to write down and then loop back to.
And I'm not going to rank the guests we've had on the show, but in terms of my experience listening in on your conversation with Ian, there was so many quotable things, such deep, like I have to turn on that. I have to think about what he just said. So don't just speed through. My habit in podcasts is to listen to them on like double speed. Don't do that. Listen to this one on half speed, press pause, rewind, and listen to it again, because Ian's one of those people that asks not just the big questions, but he's walked through the big questions in his own life. And so what comes out of him is just deep, profound wisdom.
So listen in as we have a conversation with my friend Ian. Ian, thank you so much for making time to be with us on the podcast today.
Well, I can't think of a better way to spend my afternoon than hanging out with Bob Goff.
Oh man, you're not only a really generous and kind friend, but a really knowledgeable one. And I think everybody wants to hear from you. You have like so many different things you're capable of, author, speaker, so many things. And then this Enneagram thing just blew up. Everybody says like, all of a sudden my stock goes way up if somebody says, Ian Cron. It's like I've gone to the Holy of Holies. I'm like, yeah, he's like actually awesome at yoga too. He's like actually so many things that you know how to do well. And then Ethan, your faith expression and the so anyway, thank you on behalf of all of us who might not have a chance to talk to you directly for widening our field of view to see, understand more about what's going on in us, but then understanding more about the people around us. So that's just been so beautiful. We've spent some time during this podcast talking about at different times, like what is your absurd expectation? What's your ambition? And then another time, like what are the opportunities that you might have and to clear the path and take action? What I want to talk to you about is the idea of sustaining belief. Like when things get a little bit weird, how do you sustain belief? So can you introduce for the three people on earth that don't know you already, a little bit about yourself and this adventure you've been on?
Yeah, man. So I'm a person who's enjoyed a portfolio life. I started out as a songwriter. That was my great love.
Oh, get out of town. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, man, come on. Yeah, I was a songwriter. And I still do songwriting. I love it. I love songwriting. I'm a counselor. I'm a trained therapist. I'm an Episcopal priest. I'm an author. I'm a speaker, a trained spiritual director. I just have silos of interest, and in the sum, it's not because I'm easily distracted and love to chase new ideas, although that is true. It's really, as I remember, I was about, God, it wasn't many years ago. I was driving across Texas and I was having one of those moments like, well, what is it that I do? And then I realized that if you were to take all of those different things that I do in the aggregate, what they all are in service to is helping people enter into a deeper conversation with God and the beauty and the mystery of their own lives.
Yes, totally. And one of the things that you do is like you're looking for the reason behind whatever's going on. That's one thing, is one of the hallmarks of you. It's just an unfathomable curiosity. It's insatiable. You're just curious about everything.
That's true. And I'm very curious about human beings and helping people inviting people to join me on my journey of figuring out why I'm here, what's what's God up to in the world, to seeing God in all things, as Ignatius said so beautifully, and trying to find out what's the meaning behind our suffering and our being here, and helping people try to figure out what is it that wants to enter the world through them.
Yeah, many of the people that I know that are deep thinkers and scholars, like yourself, have things in their past that have happened that have kind of shaped the questions that you're trying to answer, and so that curiosity is sometimes born of some setbacks that have happened, and you say like that. And while people know me as a pretty happy guy, and I indeed am a pretty happy guy, but I would say it born out of some uh, introspection about like what is it that I'm actually trying to compensate for. Like we've had some great conversations actually on your podcast, and if you haven't listened to Ian's podcast, tune out of mine right now. Get on his podcast. What is the name of the podcast?
It's typology.
Typology, you guys, go to that. Literally press stop right now, jump over. But the whole idea of why you do what you do is sometimes born out of some struggles that you've had trying to understand who am I and how do I fit into this. So what reads as the seven, the enthusiast, is sometimes born out of a really insecure little kid that's trying to get not validation, but just some feedback loop from people. Are we okay? Is everybody okay in here? Are we doing all right? By making people smile, by making people laugh. And if you can understand why you're doing what you're doing, now we got a ball game. But if you're just ricocheting off everybody and you don't know why, what this idea of curiosity, introspection, where did that come from for you?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'm just that way by nature. I think I was just born curious, and also I think I was born by nature a very self-reflective kind of person. I was a kid that was very drawn to spiritual themes and ideas, even as a little boy. I was drawn to music and poetry. I wasn't a sports kid so much. I was a sort of a creative. I was sort of a creative nerd, and I just loved making connections and seeing patterns and trying to figure out how they how they work together. And also I found that I made the deepest, richest connections with other people around those themes, and so I was deeply pulled toward them. I grew up in a very troubled home. I later became an addict myself, and so all of those experiences really helped to feed that curiosity, and sort of surviving those things gave me I think a resilience that was unusual at a young age, for which I'm very grateful. It was a gift. It wasn't something I accomplished, but it also gave me a deep empathy and compassion for people that have struggled. And I wanted to come alongside them and say, come struggle with me.
Yeah, one of the things we're going to talk about as you're listening to this is you think about the struggle you've got, the setbacks that the pain you've endured, and pain is pain is pain. It's not like graded on a curve. So whatever it is that you're dealing with, this is this opportunity to lean in and listen into how do you turn some of those difficulties into this idea of sustaining belief. It's to say that I still have this beautiful ambition for my life, and I'm going to take some of the things that have happened in my life and use those to embolden my life, to actually energize these ambitions. You were able to do that. One of the things that stood out, Ian, is that you said it gave you a depth to these conversations that you have with people. And you're not a surface guy. Like I'm not into sports, but I imagine we wouldn't spend much time talking just about the sports and who's on third base and all that. But you would say, why baseball? They go, what is the deeper meaning? Not that everything needs to be a philosophical conversation, but in our friendship, you will actually go to the depths of like, why does that matter to you? And who are we in this? And you've cultivated, that must not have been something that you automatically were birthed with. Is that something you've cultivated, that curiosity about people over time so that you could ask the questions to tease out the conversations that really matter?
Yeah, I again, I think part of it's temperament, and I think also I was diligent at just trying to figure out what it is that made people tick, that made me tick, and then that sort of spread out to thinking about what makes other people tick, and how is it that we connect. And you actually just said that quite well. I don't want to know, you know, what it is about baseball. I don't care about baseball, but I am fascinated about what's happening for people who are watching baseball.
Yes. Oh, about
and
like
then
winners
how
and
do you
losers.
import that knowledge into some other area of life, and go, boom, that's the secret sauce. It's like trying to see patterns.
Yes, to take something that seemingly wouldn't matter, like who cares, and to say, actually, the things that are happening around us actually do matter. Will you take enough time to reflect on that? And that's not for everybody, but if you're listening, it might be for you. And if you just slow down the cadence a little bit, if you're trying to pick a lock, you need to slow down. Did I tell you, and I'm trying to learn how to pick locks? And the way that you pick a lock is that you find a transparent lock. I bought one, and it just takes 2 paper clips, and you put some tension with the first. The second paper clip, you can watch the 7 tumblers as you're moving them, but it needs to be transparent enough. If you're doing that in the blind, you're not going to get it. But after a while, you get a touch. And I would say you're a lock picker. You're one of those guys that's picking the lock in people's lives and your own. You're listening enough that you can hear the tumblers fall. You're transparent enough that you can actually see what's happening. That's why baseball matters. That's why picking a lock matters, because we can have those deeper conversations. I don't think I've ever experienced you having a shallow conversation with people. No, really. But I think there's something beautiful. We're on the topic of sustaining belief. And I think sometimes sustaining belief is to have some people around you, surrounding yourself with some people that will ask the third question, not like what's your name and what do you do, but who are you? How do you fit into the broader context of that? And then to create safe people, like you're Switzerland. All you need is a bobsled and a bar of chocolate. You're just this really safe person for people to be around. Is that something you always were, or have you been intentional in trying to cultivate that idea that when we have conversations, they just go a little bit deeper?
Well, I think as I've gotten older, maybe the seeds of it were always there. But as I've gotten older, I have little patience for small talk. I really, at the same time, I don't want to hurl someone's face at 1,000,000 miles an hour into the depths of their being. I want to be sensitive to where people are at and be cautious. But that question, tell me your story, or who are you? I mean, just that statement, hey, tell me your story. That's a sacred question. I mean, really, that's a very sacred question.
Yeah,
And,
wouldn't that
and
be
we should
beautiful?
approach it with such interest and I because I've been a struggler in my life. I mean, I've struggled in my life, and I want to connect and help people struggle well. And because that's where all the growth is. That's where the excitement is in the struggle, like that's, and then also trying to help people find that moment. And you just said it beautifully. For me, you could take all the money in the world away from me and say, here's how we're going to pay you. We're going to pay you. You get a chance to talk to people, and there's going to be a moment when you find the key to put in their lock, and you're going to hear those 7 tumblers drop, and you're going to see the lights go on in their eyes. And to me, that is the moment. That's payday for me.
Yes,
when I see
bingo.
that moment where in their eyes they go, I never saw that before.
Yes.
I didn't know I could be loved that much. I didn't know that's how the universe operated, or that's a dimension of the universe I just didn't know about. And that's going to change everything. And I go, boom, that's what I'm here for.
Yes. It's a lock picker's touch that we could each kind of develop that. And it comes from personal reflection. It comes doing the work yourself to figure out who am I, rather than, and I know you've done the work, so that you can actually help other people. So I'll give you an example. If you're trying to figure out, you've had some setbacks, and you say, how do I move forward with these things? Understand, where did these things come from? Or what are you over identifying with? And what are you not getting real with? If you could just say, those are the things. And then the conversations, there's a great verse. It's Philippians 2:20, and you don't need a Bible verse for everything, but it's Paul talking about Timothy says he's a guy who takes a genuine interest in your welfare. If I could think of one way to describe you, you're a guy that takes a genuine interest in other people's welfare. And it starts with you understanding yourself, but it doesn't just stay there. That's that loop of introspection to say, go take somebody to Starbucks, take a genuine interest in their welfare. And when they start telling you their story, say, hang on a second, I want to take off my shoes. This is holy ground. That will actually say, this is a thing right now. I'm not passing time with you. My shoes are off. This is holy ground. Let's go.
Yeah. I was thinking today about this conversation, and I was, one of the things that has been so helpful to me as a writer, and thinking about sustained belief. There's I keep this note on my door, and it's from Homer's Odyssey. The story of Odysseus trying to get home from Troy. Remember the Battle of Troy, and he's trying to get home to Ithaca. And he's having a heck of a time. Right? He's just getting crushed out there. Every single possible calamity hits him and his men at sea. And he's just trying to get home. And to me, this whole story of the Odyssey is like to me, that's a metaphor I carry with me when I'm writing books, when I'm doing something that I've got a big ambition for, and because he's just holding on for dear life to get home. And there's this great quote in the Odyssey where and it's on my wall here. It's Odysseus. He's getting pummeled at sea. Poseidon is furious with him, and he sends this terrible storm, to kill him, to prevent him from getting home. And Odysseus writes, I will stay with it and endure through suffering hardship. And once the heaving sea has shaken my raft to pieces, then I will swim.
Wow, nothing would talk about sustaining belief better than that. Sometimes what we have is a setback along the way. Something goes wonky, and we think it's a message from God, when really everything isn't this battle between good and evil. Some stuff just goes awry, and you'll find out later, like how that fit into the longer version of developing some patience in yourself or some character attributes. But for in a time where you want to figure out what does it all mean right now, to just be patient to say, I think the cumulative effect of this is going to develop in me these attributes. And but to find somebody you could get real with, to say, honestly, right now, I'm just a little chapped about this, to just be like, I want to punch a wall. And if you could find some safe people to have an honest conversation, but wise people, not just smart people, because smart people are a dime a dozen. Find wise people. You among a small group of people would be wise people that I would go to say, man, here's some stuff I'm sorting out. I don't really have a shelf for that thing. And then I think you'd probably, instead of trying to find one of your shelves, you'd say, well, it sounds like you need to build a new shelf if you don't have that. So sometimes a wise friend will just listen and not say a word either. Say like, wow, man, that's got to really sting. If I come up with something, I'll let you know, but I just want you to know I'm with you. And sometimes just to be with somebody in the middle of that is just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I have a dear friend. His name is Michael Cusick. He's a therapist in Colorado. He's one of the best psychotherapists I know. And I've known him for 30 years. And when I was writing The Road Back to You, there were lots of times, man, where I just was overwhelmed. I was trying to write a book in 5 months on a fast deadline. I was trying to learn and write at the same time. I mean, it was crazy. It was 12-hour days. But that's when I put that Odysseus thing up on my door, like, when that raft gets torn to pieces, then I will swim. And he, Mike would call me, once, no, I don't know, more, 3 times a week. He'd call me, but how you doing, man? And I'd say, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. I don't, and he would just send me texts like, swim.
Yes.
Swim.
Yeah.
And then he did another thing that was so amazing. And it was another thing I put on the window over my laptop. He said, Ian, every time you say you're going to quit, I just want you to think of, a bunch of faces of people who will benefit from what it is that you're doing. Yes. And forget yourself. Just, as a friend of mine likes, my AA sponsor likes to say to me, try not to get too involved in your life, Ian. And he would just say, get out of yourself. And, by way of sustaining belief, just think about, what's going to happen when you get home to Ithaca? What's going to happen when, you actually do deliver a book that may, and of course I had no guarantees then, but that may actually move the needle in a couple of people's lives. And that's what, can help you hold on to the raft that's breaking apart.
Yeah, sometimes living in anticipation for what it might mean in the lives of the people that matter to you the most if you would stay the course, even against all of the difficulties and setbacks. I know there's a vulnerability to writing and putting your thoughts out there that you'll have people that will disagree with you. Let's say, like, I write books and I don't put Bible verses in it because I'm not writing it for John Piper. I'm like writing it for the guy at the tire store. And it's not about a second-year seminary student. I want the person that feels like completely alienated from faith things to just feel welcome, not just invited, but actually welcome. Gay, straight, Buddhist, Baptist, whoever, like, just get in here. So one of the examples is to know why you're doing what you're doing, even on this, like, you have an ambition, you've gone for it. It isn't going well right now, but if you're reminded about the reason why that underlying that, then it gives you the courage to sustain that belief, to just say, that was worth it then, and it's worth it now. Have you had some setbacks where you were misunderstood? It happens to me all the time. That's just Tuesday for me. And I'm like not an angsty guy. I just like people will like misunderstand something and get wrapped up. And I'm like, I don't know, man, get a puppy.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Setbacks are just part of the deal, man. And I think that the two great enemies of sustained belief and of actually realizing an ambition, the two great traps. And by the way, there were the two great traps for Odysseus in the Odyssey. There's just so much wisdom in that book. It's crazy.
Everybody's going on Amazon right now and ordering.
It's actually not the easiest read in the world. I wouldn't.
Well, they'll get the Cliff Notes.
Class, but it's just fear and lethargy. Those are the death to great ambitions.
Tease that out for me a little more.
Yeah, well, so like, fear would be the Cyclops. It's like in the Odyssey, but it's like fear is, I can't. This is too big. I can't do it. This is just way too big for me. I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get exposed. People are going to laugh at me. I'm going to laugh at me. My mother's going to disown me. Whatever. My dog won't talk to me anymore if I keep going on with this project. It's just fear upon fear upon fear. Just making movies in your head all day long of what could go wrong.
Isn't that nuts?
Oh yeah, catastrophizing.
Yeah, and every alternate ending is worse than the other alternate ending.
Yeah, and fear is the kiss of death in the face of a great dream. And then so that would be one, and lethargy is the other one. And by that I mean, hey, don't worry about it. Pop a beer, watch a little Netflix. Tomorrow you can start tomorrow, and that's lethargy. That's the delusional belief that mañana. We'll get to it mañana, and it's like, nope. Those two things are the kiss of death: fear and lethargy.
And I would say one of the things that would launch people, the ignition, is a sense of love. Like that, literally, if it's fear and lethargy on one side of the equation, it's love, to just say, I love not only my neighbors, but I love myself enough to be the guy God made me to be the woman God made you to be, to say, I actually have so much love for other people that I'm willing to risk all that time in spell check and being misunderstood to write the road back to you, and to say, expose myself, knowing, because that's the only thing that'll overcome it. Because if it's popularity, that's going to fade in a big hurry. If it's something like all the things that people, on the dashboard that they're looking at, those things are going to fade. But if it's like the real version of love, selfless love, then that actually will give us what we need to get past all the things that are holding us back. It's just hard to get that. How have you navigated that? Because you know why you're doing what you're doing. And I know that you love people, and you've used that to overcome it. You got on the raft. Like, Where is that coming from? I know your faith is important to you, but how do you keep fanning the flames of that fire?
I mean, that's a great question. One is, I think I do remain in community, as you were saying earlier. You know, I'm a part of a 12-step community that keeps me sober, but there's so much wisdom is shared in those rooms. You know, where people ask me really great questions that keep me going. I had a bout of anxiety the other day about a decision. You know what I mean? Like I had to face it was an important decision. And this my sponsor said something to me that was so amazing. I love great questions. I have a whole notebook full of questions.
Yeah.
And he said, well, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And I went, what did you say? He said, well, what choice would you make here if you weren't afraid? And suddenly the light went on and I realized it just clarified everything. It's like, well, I would, you know, move past my insecurity and do this and that. And the next thing he said, well, why don't you call me back in 3 hours after you've done that? And then we'll talk again.
Yeah.
So,
Beautiful.
Community is so important for hanging in there and keeping going.
I would tease out that a little bit further too. And it's not just a community with similar belief systems or a surrounding a topic or something, but it's a community that has as its undercarriage vulnerability to just say, I got no answers for you, but I got a couple questions. And there's something beautiful. It's not lost on me that Jesus asked 300 questions and he only answered 2 in 3 years. So I feel like
you know what, can I just say something else about this? Because this is a therapist and someone who practices it. So like when I'm in the middle of, and by the way, I'm an ambitious guy. And I hope in the best sense of the word, you know, because sometimes people will go, well, he's ambitious in the worst sense of the word, you know. That usually means it's someone on the take, you know, it's their own ego that is like out on the hunt for something to validate itself or to prop itself up. But you know, when I find myself getting derailed, I always ask myself 5 questions. This is going to sound so basic that people will probably think, duh, you know, but people do not do this stuff.
Come on, bring it.
Jump to large existential things. I always ask myself these questions. If I'm in a bad spot, I go, have I eaten today?
Yes.
When was the last time I had a meal? Right?
Yeah.
Because usually you can't believe when people come in my office as a therapist, these are the questions I ask them too. When was the last time you ate? 2, how much sleep have you gotten in the last 2 nights? 3, how much water have you drunk today? Right? Like 4, how much exercise have you been getting? And then 5, how much time do you spend on technology? And I just ask those 5 questions. It's amazing to me. 40% of the time, people go, oh, I haven't eaten. I didn't eat breakfast. I haven't eaten since last night. I said, well, it's 2:00 in the afternoon. Go eat something and call me back in 2 hours. We'll see if you're still depressed.
Yes, exactly.
And I'll get a text that says, hey, I ate something. I feel better. I'm ready to go. So it's also the little things in life that sustain belief. You know, it's like paying attention to your life. Like pay attention to, are you creating the natural climate in which your ambitions can be realized or not and sustain you can sustain your beliefs, you know? Got to take care of yourself.
And it's all about being situationally aware. My son, Adam, wasn't very into high school, nor was I, but we got him flying an airplane when he was a junior in high school. And one of the things that I noticed about him in particular is he became very situationally aware. He knew what was going on immediately in front of him. He knew what was going on beside of him. He knew what was going on ahead of him. And I would say if you're listening, just like with these 5 what seem like basic questions, Ian was talking, just to be situationally aware, to say if you're feeling a little stressed out, to say, oh, well, I've had a move in a relationship that went wonky and I had this. So to say this might not be the best time to be making those decisions. So whether you need some broccoli or a Twizzler, but like you need to just figure out where you're at and to say, is this the right time? And then not just to say, where are you at in your head, but to say, am I operating in a community of people who love me and accept me? Or am I trying to gain everybody's approval? Because if you're trying to get everybody's approval, then you're just going to be whacked out because you're trying to get it from strangers and all these other places. Say, where I'm feeling is super insecure right now. I'm looking for a bunch of signals from people who are total strangers to me, and I haven't had anything to eat. That would be a great time to say, I need to chill out. I need to focus, get a little bit more centered. And then surround myself with some people who will ask me questions, but not give me a bunch of answers.
Yeah, and what you're tapping into right there is like a huge theme for me, which is what does it mean to live wide awake? And that situational awareness is an example of somebody who's living consciously. I think most people live unconsciously most of the time. They're just on autopilot. You know what I mean? They're just trapped in these repetitious loops of the same old, same old. They make the same mistakes over and over and over again, and they don't take the time to reflect on the question of why. They have no curiosity about the invisible forces and the hidden presences that are beyond the fence line of their awareness. You know what I mean? To find out what's going on under the surface of my life, without being a navel gazer. This is all in service to becoming a more generative, beautiful human being in the world who's more loving and open and capacious inside. And so what you're describing in that situational awareness, and I would say to you, in the spiritual life, whether you're a Buddhist or a Christian or Hindu, it doesn't matter to me. If you were to take the sum teaching of all of those teachers, I have to say this across the board, it's always going to be wake up.
Yes.
Just wake up. I mean, that is it. It's like, wake up to the immediacy of God's presence and love and vitality just brimming inside you and outside you, and live not like someone who's sleepwalking or half asleep walking through life. It's like, hey man, you get one shot at this as far as I know. So it'd be really good if you did it wide awake, because I mean, seriously, I can think back at times in my life when I wasn't very wide awake. And I'm talking about, just kind of just on autopilot. Those types of people they're like drunk drivers. They just bang guardrail to guardrail through people's lives without really, understanding, well, what's happening? I don't really understand. It's like, well, wake up, man. It's like, this is what's happening. And, I think part of the journey too is knowing when to quit. I've seen people, like sometimes quitting is the smartest thing you can do. And it's like, after a while, and people don't know when to quit a lot of the time. It's like they think, oh my gosh, I put so much effort. Yeah, but I mean, I put hours and months into this thing. And it's like, yeah, but like after a while, it's like, hey man, you'd be much better cutting out. And because, you know what I'm saying? Like, even though you've done all that, don't worry, nothing will be wasted. Nothing will be wasted. But there is a moment when it's just, you have to say to yourself, I got to cut my losses here. And very few people are willing to cut losses.
That's awesome. I remember my parents lied to me. They said goths aren't quitters. And we're actually quitters. I started quitting one thing every single Thursday to just like quit stuff. It could be something that's just not serving the bigger purposes in your life. Maybe you're bent out of shape at somebody. Maybe it's a job. I've quit several jobs. I remember coming home. Maria was like, how was your day at work? I'm like, work? She's like, no. And like, you've quit again. Like, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's just times I remember reading this thing one time about some guy who was climbing Everest, and he got within, like, I don't know, 50 yards of it, of the summit, and what weather was coming in, and it's like 50 yards from literally 50 yards from the summit. He had to make a decision as to what he was going to do, and he turned around and went back down. And he said, sometimes it takes more courage to turn around and go down the mountain than go all the way to the top. And I thought, that's brilliant, because everybody's always talks about, reaching the top. It's like, sometimes it takes more courage to realize, I got to turn around.
Yeah. So sometimes sustaining belief can be confused with like reckless tenacity, and that you actually, while tenacity can be an attribute, when you go around the corner on that one, it actually can be a little destructive because you're not living fully into the person God made you to be.
Yeah. And by the way, I mean, we also have to count the cost of what our ambition is. What's it costing other people? Sometimes you got to cut bait, because it's like, man, this isn't just costing me. This is costing a whole lot of other people.
So Ian, there's a bunch of resources that are beyond what we can talk about in the podcast, but I've taken advantage of them. All of my friends have as well. So can you just recap some of those different places where people can find you and to have a conversation in more depth about the Enneagram, how it fits them, some of the books? Tell us where those are.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Well, the first one is obviously the road back to you, an Enneagram journey to self-discovery. It's a really, I think, the thing I'm proud about it is it's such an accessible introduction to the Enneagram. The second one is, this is a project that I'm so excited about. We just recently launched a new Enneagram assessment, which it's really an assessment and a report, because you not only find out what your type is, you get a 21-page report at one level and a 45-page report at the next level up, in terms of price points. It is the most accurate and robust, content-rich Enneagram assessment and report I think you can find anywhere. And I've done a lot of research, and a lot of work on it. So I'm thrilled about that. So people could go to Morgan Cron or iancron.com, either one, IANCRON.com, and they can check out the IEQ9 assessment and report.
And if I can jump in on that, I've taken the assessment and report. I gave it to Sweet Maria. She's like, nailed it. Because otherwise you could say like, oh, I know the Enneagram. You're a 7. You're a happy guy. There's a little bit more to it. So I would just encourage you. Our entire family has read Ian's books. We've taken the tests. It has really shaped a lot of the ways that we communicate well with each other. And we can literally find that road back to you. What other books or resources are out there?
Well, the Typology podcast is really a great resource. Typology is we say that it's a podcast on which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. And it's lots of interviews with people and panels of people about their type and their experience of being one of the 9 Enneagram types. And they're fun, they're interesting, sometimes deeply moving, but never boring. I mean, they're just, you just give people a chance to talk about their interior world, man. And there's just no end of adventure.
You've had Sweet Maria and I on that, and Sweet Maria and has been on about one podcast, and that's Rounding Up, and it's yours. You would be the only person she'd be willing to do it.
She was so great on that pod.
Didn't she do a great job? I mean, you just create those spaces where people feel safe. Well, Ian, thank you. We love you. Thanks for doing what you're doing, and keep doing more of it.
Back at you, Bob. Love to you and to Maria and the family. And I hope we see each other in person soon.
Yeah, we're going to make that happen.
Good, man. Peace.
No matter who you are or what your big ambitions are, everyone's going to face challenges in bringing their dreams to reality. You're going to have setbacks for sure, but even deeper than that, your struggle to see your ambitions realized is going to require that you sustain a deep conviction that you're on the right path, doing the right things for the right reasons. This month, as a part of the Dream Big podcast and the part that we're focusing on in the framework, Sustaining Belief, we created a designed guided workbook for you to download and work through your own personalized plan to sustaining belief for your dreams. Guided exercises that are going to help you create a deep foundation you're going to need to keep going. It's free and available to you in the show notes to this episode. Also, this fall, we're offering more live workshops, one at Onsite in Nashville again, and one in Atlanta, both of them in October. These are days set aside for you to invest in your big dreams in a community of other like-minded friends who are pursuing their dreams. All of that guided, of course, by Bob Goff. You could sign up for those workshops at dreambigframework.com. Sign up at dreambigframework.com.
Well, I don't think there's been another guest that quotes Homer in the just normal conversational
Certainly
speak.
not me.
And I was writing down that quote. I looked it up. This is a quote that he had. I will stay with it and endure through suffering hardship. And once the heaving sea has shaken my raft to pieces, then I will swim. Like that just, that's deep. That's
resolve.
So good.
I love that. We've talked about having a resolve meter. And that is saying, I'm just doing what I'm doing with a ton of resolve. It's not being just strong-willed. It's knowing with clarity why you're doing what you're doing, moving in that direction, and be unyielding in your attempts to get there. And it all starts with some introspection, reflection on who am I and where is this coming from? How am I hardwired by the God of the universe? And how do I move forward in a positive and productive way given who I am?
And something that you said, I'd love for you to expand on it a little bit. You talked about that every time you put your work out into the world, it's vulnerable because you're exposing yourself to people's feedback about you, their opinions about you. Does this work or not? But that's so much about sustaining belief because you're on that precipice of getting yourself out there.
Yeah, and where people have an impression about who you are without knowing who you are.
Yeah.
Very few people actually know you, and so they'll have an impression. And so if I'm feeling misunderstood, I have to make the same decision that you as a listener have to make, which is, am I okay with that? Is it okay that I'll be misunderstood? And just so long as I'm not misunderstood by myself, and I don't feel like I'm misunderstood by God, then when it happens that you're misunderstood, go like, well, yeah, that would make sense.
Right.
If you only had little sound bites of who it was that you didn't understand the pieces in between. But that's our opportunity and task, to understand the pieces in between. Those are the things that are really us. And otherwise we become caricatures of who we are. You become the balloon guy or the this or that or the however it is that people know you, but to understand, not because Shrek said it, but that like we have layers, not just onions, but that we have these layers to ourselves. But you need to find somebody that actually is willing to take a genuine interest in you along the way. You need to understand yourself and then find some other people that will draw that out of you. When I listen to Ian, it makes me want to have a long conversation with a good friend.
Well, I was talking to a good friend of mine recently. He asked me this question: Why don't I write more? Why don't I put out more into the world? And I was kind of unpacking it, had some excuses, but ultimately, what kept coming in the back of my mind was, frankly, I'm actually worried that some old Facebook friend of mine from high school is going to see something I post and think, who does that guy think he is? And I said that out loud to a friend. He looked at me like I was the biggest goofball in the world. Like, really? And I said, yeah, I'm a grown man who's worried about somebody from 25 years ago.
Yeah,
what they're going to think about
stranger
me. Yes.
that is reacting to an old version of you.
That's right.
And so you don't let the most current version of you off the
Come
leash
out,
because you're afraid of rejection. And at some point, you just need to not embrace or aim towards rejection, but to just understand that will happen along the way. I'm not going to blow everybody's hair back, nor would I expect to. But I'm just so delighted that somebody else might connect with them in a different way than I might. And that might just be, good judgment on their part to turn the squelch down when it comes to me, because they obviously need something different than I have to offer. And the same is true for you as listeners. You just don't, you have certain things to offer, and that doesn't scratch where everybody itches. And so there's going to be you don't need to perceive that as rejection. It's just that you're not for them right now. But you can still coexist.
That's great.
But don't expect that there's going to be this across the boards adoption and embrace of your ideas or what you've understood to be true, and you realize that you're just becoming more and more authentic along the way, and your understanding of, if faith is important to you, you'll understand your faith more in the rigorous demands of Scripture. If faith isn't important to you, you'll understand other things to be true. And I'm just chilling out. I'm not trying to talk people into stuff anymore. I'm not trying to talk people into faith. I'm not trying to talk me into faith. I just want to be more and more authentic about what's true. And the more, for me, that I dive into Scripture, the more I understand what's true.
Yeah. And what Ian said that really resonates with me, he said, fear and lethargy are the death of great ambitions. That's what you're talking about. Fear of what other people think, just kind of get stuck or overwhelmed there. And I just love the way you said that. Just know that that's going to happen. People aren't going to get you. Not everybody is going to understand you or really receive you well.
Yeah, and you'll have that moment where somebody will say something that's offensive to you, and you think you can't say that to me.
Right.
But actually, if you reflect on it for a moment, they actually can, because they actually did.
They did. Yeah. Too late.
That just happened. Deal with it.
Yeah.
And so what you need to decide is, am I going to camp out on what they just said about me? Because it actually just happened.
Yeah.
And so am I going to try to over-identify with my failures or my shortcomings, or if somebody points out with a word of correction, how am I going to flash at that because I'm so insecure that I can't take that? Am I going to engage in a bunch of useless arguments that Paul said not to engage in? But that for me, what I'm finding is a true north is, if I have a clear understanding of how God wants us to interact with each other, then it helps me kind of blueprint out how when in the heat of battle, when that happens, you go like, oh yeah, I'm just not going to engage in that. It's like kind of, it's a controversy that isn't one that's worth my time. But mazel tov, like just go do your thing.
Yeah.
Like if that's your thing.
Yep. And there's such a rarity for the overnight success like that really never happens. In listening on Ian's life, we perhaps know him now as this Enneagram guy, this guru. But as you were talking about, he's like, no, I've been a songwriter, I've been a poet, I've been a priest, a therapist, this portfolio life for the past 30 years. And all of a sudden, it's like, who's this Ian Cron guy? There he is.
Yeah, new version.
Yeah, new version.
Yeah.
And none of the other stuff was wasted.
So I hope what you've heard today is encouraging to you. And then more importantly, I hope you can just take one or two practical things you've learned, take those notes that you've made, and then incorporate them into your life. Be bold. Be tenacious, go after this thing. You are worth every minute that you'll spend getting clear about why you're doing what you're doing, why you've done what you've done, and sustaining belief for the next thing.